It's a pleasure to welcome to the program Dr. Tracy Weitz, the director of the Advancing New Standards in Reproductive Health program at the Bixby Center for Reproductive Health at UC San Francisco. Welcome to the program, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
So, it's the 40th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. In many respects, I think, and tell me, from a legal perspective, I think the re-election of President Obama, I think, is the best thing that could happen for Roe v. Wade. But on the ground, there seems to me to have been a women's right to reproductive health seems as threatened as ever.
Yeah, I think that the election of Obama secures at least the Supreme Court for this moment in time. But the fight for many decades has been at the state level, which since the Casey decision in 1992 have been allowed to regulate abortion to express their disapproval of abortion, both to women and to healthcare providers who offer it.
And we're looking at, particularly since 2010 in many respects, sort of an unprecedented onslaught on the state level on a woman's right to choose. You wrote recently, I think it was in the Huffington Post, to suppose that states-based abortion regulations would be less prevalent if the pro-choice movement had behaved differently, or if it had different leadership is naive. Rather, the fight over abortion will continue as long as it's an effective tool of the conservative economic political establishment. Tell me what you meant by that.
Well, the country has always been quite conflicted about abortion, whether it's moral, immoral, should be regulated, should be not regulated. But abortion state restrictions really have very little to do with that fight. They are an attempt to galvanize a population of voters who otherwise would vote, whose economic interests are more aligned with the party that is pro-choice. So a way to keep that conservative, particularly evangelical Christian voters, aligned with the Republican Party and aligned with very conservative economic policies that benefit the highly wealthy. They introduce new legislation at sort of on steroid rate that says, look, we care about your issues, look what we're doing, and then it keeps people aligned with that conservative movement.
I mean, in many respects, that's how this became an issue at least a broader political issue from the very beginning. This was the plan since the mid to late 70s.
Right. The reason that I wrote the piece in the Huffington Post was to remind us that this has a long history of political manipulation. And it isn't that suddenly in 2010 the American public woke up and said, look, we disagree with abortion, therefore we're going to elect politicians and they're going to implement agenda. This has been a very strategic move to align moral conservatives, social conservatives, from particular demographic groups with a conservative party who actually doesn't really care about abortion. They really care about the economic policies that they're able to get through. They cloak them in social conservatism in order to keep people voting against their own economic self-interest.
And there's also, there's a huge, I guess the irony is that there's also the implications of having of a right of women to make their own determination as to whether or not over their reproductive systems is also sort of based in the economic liberation of women as well. Aside from it being a fig leaf for another agenda, aside from the conservatives using abortion as one of the sort of social, identification issues, like in many respects, like guns, like marriage equality. I think there's also some real economic implications for women when it comes to having reproductive rights, which also, in some ways, impact the economics that men deal with.
Yeah, the shift to an economic system where both members of the household need to work has dramatically shifted power arrangements in families, in particular or in families that had traditional patriarchal structures. So folks who are worried that when women can control both their sexuality and their fertility, that the traditional patriarchal family structure is threatened. So absolutely, folks that are concerned about sort of male authority, folks that are concerned about men's economic predomination in the marketplace are very concerned about what abortion means in terms of women's liberation. I think that argument gets less attention in the general population because it's seen as very antiquated. I think the fact that what you saw in Romney's inability to articulate that women should make equal pay for equal work suggests that that is actually an undercurrent of the folks who are putting forward some of these anti-abortion positions, but I think it's rarely articulated in that way because women in the workforce has become so ubiquitous. I mean, it really is not an issue that we are fighting about publicly. It may be an issue that we're fighting at through abortion regulation, but it is not actually what gets said about the reason for these restrictions.
Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain extent, that to me is an incredibly fascinating dynamic because I think it permeates all of it. I mean, I think it obviously it triggers sort of a conservative mindset of there is that in some ways reproductive rights is threatening the traditional family values, which in their mind is that it is extremely patriarchal. It also has implications because it creates a certain pressure on wages for men that is sort of articulated through this. And I think I think this is so bound up in it because I think a lot of the misogyny we see that is sort of woven through we see state legislatures refer to women, as cattle, and I guess dropping the H instead of chattel. But so much of it is bound up in that this is so much of women's reproductive rights is bound up in sort of larger questions of feminism.
Yes. The reason that you saw much more attention in this election cycle to both abortion and contraception suggests that it really is about this larger issue and not just about the moral status of the fetus. Because if it was just about the moral status of the fetus, then we'd be just having a fight about abortion. But in fact, this election cycle suggests to all of us that it's about more than abortion. It's about abortion, it's about contraception, it's about women's sexuality generally, which is about a larger set of social anxieties. And I think social anxieties that are about the disruption of the family structure, but also disruptions of sort of white elite power. I think the same backlash that you saw in abortion rights was represented in the backlash against immigration rights. You saw the same kind of sort of real anger, really hardcore policies in states around both abortion and immigration, and they have to do with the sort of crisis of power of the traditional white, male-dominated patriarchal family.
And so, I mean, let me get your sense of, about, I guess it was probably about maybe in 2004, we heard a lot about Democrats traditionally considered I think quite obviously the pro-reproductive rights political movement, I guess, in this country. But we saw at that time there was an attempt to sort of blur those lines a little bit. Give me your sense of where, as a movement, and how it's aligned with the Democratic Party is today relative to just like 10 years ago.
Well, abortion is the single best marker of which political party you belong to. So while the country has become more nuanced in its understanding of all kinds of political issues, the abortion issue is very much party allegiance. If you're against abortion, you're more likely to be a Republican. If you're for abortion rights, you're more likely to be a Democrat. So there's been a big polarization across the parties. What that has meant to the Democratic Party is that it's trying to be a big tent, and it has reduced its sort of hardcore support for abortion rights and moved in, I think we saw this with Bill Clinton, the let's make abortion safe, legal, and rare. You saw President Obama saying let's reduce the need for abortion. This idea that there was sort of a middle ground compromise where we could all agree that we disliked abortion, but we didn't want to change its legal status. What that did for abortion conversations is highly stigmatized the women who used abortion services, pretty much told them that even the party that supports their legal right to abortion does not support their use of abortion. And women became silenced. They did not tell their stories. We forgot that 1 in 3 women will have an abortion in their lifetime, that every year the same number of abortions happen as cesarean sections, and yet all of us can name a number of people in our life who've had a cesarean section this year, but we can't name the women in our lives who've had abortions. So we drove abortion into a much more stigmatized place, not just from people who were opposed to abortion, but people who were in support of legal abortion who thought that this could be the compromise that would stop the abortion wars.
And do you think that pendulum has swung back? I mean, because it seems to me that this past election, it's swung back a little bit. I mean, maybe it was more because maybe this fight was fought more on contraception than abortion over the past 10 months or so, or the past year. But do you have a sense that it's swung back? I mean, just because the Democrats saw that there is that. I mean, NBC came out with a poll, I guess, just this past week, saying that for the first time, I think ever, 54% of adults say that abortion should be legal, either always or most of the time. That's the biggest majority that it's been. Do you think that pendulum has swung back at all, at least in terms of the Democratic Party?
I do believe that it has swung back, in part because it didn't work as a strategy. Reaching out, trying to find this sort of soft compromise where we all agree we dislike abortion and we're not going to talk about it, didn't stop abortion rights opponents from pushing for harder legislation, for saying more egregious things about, let's say, the idea that a pregnancy that results from rape is itself a gift from God. That it strategically did not work. So I think that many people are backing away, saying, no, that let's actually talk about what's true, which is that lots of women have abortions, that this is part of how they control their lives, and that we as a country affirm their legal right to do this. So I do think the pendulum is swinging back. I also think that young people who are often talked about as not caring about this issue care a lot about the economic and social stratification of access to this right, and so they're really beginning to raise their voices about the unacceptability, let's say, of the Hyde Amendment, the first compromise, the 1976 compromise that said that taxpayer dollars could not be used for abortion. That the consequences of that for poor women are now being raised by a younger generation that is much more of a social justice, has much more of a social justice orientation to abortion rights, and is just much more progressive generally. So I think that the pendulum is swinging back.
That last point is really the most interesting. Is also incredibly important, I think, to note, because when you see these attacks on access to abortion in the rights, it is always really felt most by poor women, and they are also not coincidentally the least represented in many respects. They are the one of the weakest political constituencies, and that really is the challenge, isn't it? I mean, because a wealthy woman can take time off of work, can take a day, may not be working, can drive out of state, can go to the one abortion clinic that may be in their state 4 hours away. But if you're poor, you can't do it. I mean, I just saw some really sort of shocking percentage of women, of poorer women, end up getting abortions late because of their reduced access and the cost. So that's really where this battle is going to be fought, isn't it?
Right. The battle is now fought on the economic and inequalities associated with this right. I think we can say that the right is, as a constitutional matter, the right is settled. Now, whether or not the Supreme Court, overturns Roe or states continue to regulate abortions, the pendulum is moving in the direction, and we know that abortion has existed in every society since the beginning of time. It exists in all countries where it is illegal. Abortion is just a universal. It happens. Women control their fertilities. The fight now is over who gets to have access to that right and how much that right is associated with economic and social stratification. I think that puts the progressives on a much better, firmer ground because it connects the abortion issue to all kinds of other social inequalities. There's inequalities around who can raise their kids with dignity, around who gets a good education for their children, around who has access to college. When the abortion right is situated in a much larger set of requests from the progressive or demands from the progressive movement, I think it's in a much firmer and stronger place socially.
Great. Dr. Tracy Weitz, Director of the Advancing New Standards in Reproductive Health at the Bixby Center for Reproductive Right at UC San Francisco. Thanks so much for joining us.
Sure. Thank you for having me.